you, Sapna ma'am, for providing me the opportunity to lead this masterclass. It's becoming crucial for achieving decarbonization of hard to abate sector. There are few sectors where decarbonization is very limited. So many sectors like iron ore and steel, fertilizer, refining, and methanol and maritime shipping. They emit major amount of carbon dioxide, and carbon-free hydrogen will play a critical role in enabling deep decarbonization. This has resulted uh, in growing global momentum towards hydrogen in general and green hydrogen in particular. Declining prices of hydrogen, of water using electricity from renewable, like declining prices of hydrogen coupled with growing urgency for decarbonization means the growing demand for hydrogen globally, and it could grow by almost 400% by 2050, led by industry and transportation. Recently, the Prime Minister on the Independence Day in 2021, he signaled the launch of National Hydrogen Mission, attest to India's intent to be global hub for green hydrogen. As PM Modi's speech outlines, and I will read, not only will green hydrogen be the basis of green growth through green jobs, but it will also set an example. So, hydrogen, it was first discovered in 16th century when Paracelsus accidentally poured iron filling on the sulfuric acid. But it was Henry Cavendish who identified this as a separate element. Hydrogen is, as we know, is the most abundant element in the universe. About 75% of mass of the universe is made up of hydrogen and 90% by volume. However, in the Earth atmosphere, if you see, the quantity of hydrogen is very small. This is because of very high diffusivity of hydrogen. It is richest in terms of energy per unit mass, but when it burns in air, it produces clean exhaust. And the byproduct obtained is only water. And thus it has a great potential towards decarbonization. We also know that hydrogen is a versatile fuel. It can be produced from a wide variety of sources. It can be produced from whatever local feedstock is available, and thus it can promote the use of diverse domestic and sustainable energy resources. With the use of local feedstock available, we can produce hydrogen, and then it can be utilized for various applications. And thus we can reduce our dependence on fossil fuel and on import of fossil fuel, which will also lead to reducing CAD of India, current account deficit of India. From the point of production to the point of consumption, if the production is also green, we can reduce greenhouse gas emission. We also know that hydrogen usage is not new in the energy sector. It was actually being used earlier also. Hydrogen was being used in various chemical industries as well as refineries. This can also serve as an option for long-term and large-scale storage when integrated with energy which are based on renewables like solar, wind, geothermal, etc. Now coming to the properties of hydrogen. Starting with properties of hydrogen, we can see that hydrogen is the simplest element and also the first one in the periodic table. It is the lightest element having one proton and one electron in atomic form. Due to this arrangement, it is very reactive and not found as an atomic hydrogen. Rather, it combines with various other elements forming either water or different hydrocarbons or organic compounds. Atomic hydrogen, they do not exist. It exists in form of diatomic molecule, and this molecule, if to be dissociated to form atomic hydrogen, requires a very high dissociation energy of 435 kilojoule per mole. Hydrogen, it is a colorless gas, it is odorless and tasteless. It is highly flammable and non-corrosive and non-toxic in nature, but it acts as an asphyxiant. If hydrogen is combined in a confined space, then it can displace oxygen, reducing the oxygen level, and thereby it can cause breathlessness. If it reduces the oxygen level below certain level like 12% by volume, in that case, it can lead to severe health challenges and also unconsciousness. Hydrogen has a very low density of 0.08 kilogram per meter cube. It is 14 times lighter than air. It has a very high diffusivity and buoyancy. Hydrogen, if you see its isotopic form, it exists in three isotopic form: protium, deuterium, and tritium. And if we take protium, it constitutes the maximum part, that is 99% almost. Now coming to the phase diagram of hydrogen, there are different regions wherein hydrogen exists in form of solid, liquid, and gaseous. As we can see in the diagram given below, the triple point of hydrogen is where all the three phases coexist, and it is at 13.8 Kelvin, which is minus 259 degrees centigrades, and at a pressure of 7.2 kilopascal, which is really low. Hydrogen boiling point, it is minus 253 degrees centigrades at atmospheric pressure. However, this boiling point can also be increased. Hydrogen can still be liquefied at high pressure up to a maximum of minus 240 degrees centigrades or 33 Kelvin at a pressure of 1.3 megapascal, which is the critical point beyond which it cannot be liquefied by simply increasing the pressure. Hydrogen can be obtained in solid form at a temperature of minus 259 degrees C at the atmospheric pressure. Under normal condition, liquid hydrogen is a mixture of ortho and para hydrogen. Now at a normal temperature and pressure, this is a mix of 75% of ortho hydrogen and 25% of para hydrogen. If you see the difference between two stages of hydrogen, is that the nuclear spins are parallel in case of ortho and anti-parallel in case of para hydrogen. When hydrogen has to be liquefied, the 75% of ortho, it needs to be converted into para hydrogen because that is a lower energy state, and that process is a slightly exothermic reaction and a slow process. As such, required catalyst. Coming to the fuel properties of
sorry, Sourav, your slides are not moving.
presentation mode, so it was not moving. Is it moving now?
Yeah. Now it's okay.
Was this slide visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. Okay. No. Okay. I think I will play like this. Coming to the fuel properties of hydrogen, the density of hydrogen is very low. And we also know that density depends upon pressure and temperature. So for hydrogen at normal temperature pressure, it is 0.899 kilogram per meter cube. When we compare it, let's say when we see what is the specific gravity that is defined with respect to reference material, if it is gaseous, then the specific gravity, if it is gaseous, then with respect to air, if it is liquid, then with respect to water. So the density of hydrogen is 7% of that of air. However, liquid hydrogen, which has a density of 70.8 kilogram per meter cube, this is 7% of that of water. If we talk about the energy content, which is the amount of energy which is in a fuel, that could be per unit on the mass basis or on a volume basis. We can also define it as the amount of hydrogen which is released on complete combustion of a unit mass of fuel. So if we look at these number for hydrogen, the higher heating value is 141 megajoule per kilogram. Lower heating value is 120, as against that of gasoline, which is just 48. So hydrogen contains approximate 3 times that much of energy per unit weight as that carried by gasoline or diesel. That means it has high energy content on mass basis, but the situation is entirely different when we consider a volume basis. The amount of energy in a given volume of fuel, energy density, this is very low for hydrogen. For hydrogen at the temperature of 15 degree centigrades and 1 atmospheric pressure, this value is just 10.5. However, for gasoline, this is 31,150. Liquid hydrogen has a higher density, it is 8,490. Now, these are very low number as against the conventional fossil fuel, which tells us that in order to store appreciable amount of hydrogen, very large volume is required. This amount also tells us how compactly we can pack the molecule together in a given volume. So that means that the volume that will be required to store hydrogen will be very high until and unless these are compressed to very high pressure. Even when it is compressed to a pressure like 700 bar, the energy density is still 4500 megajoule per meter cube, which is very lower than that of gasoline. Coming to the type of hydrogen, these are various type of hydrogen. I mentioned the process and the source from which it is obtained. Like black hydrogen, it is obtained from coal by the process of gasification. By using natural gas through the process of steam reforming, we get gray. Using the natural gas as source and the process is steam reforming with carbon capture, it is blue hydrogen. Then pink hydrogen. The green hydrogen, we know the source is renewable energy, source for power or electricity, and the process is electrolysis. A new concept is coming into the discussion, which is geological hydrogen, which is the hydrogen directly obtained from the subsurface of the earth. Coming to the production of green hydrogen, the production of green hydrogen is very simple. Using the electrolysis process, we apply a potential difference between two electrodes, which is kept in a container with water. This technique produces clean energy without any pollution by utilizing energy from renewable sources. We use DC power, which is mostly derived from the renewables, and is used for water electrolysis. I've also mentioned the basic equation for electrolysis. The solution splits into ion positive and negative, which conducts electricity in a water solution by flowing from one electrode to the other. These are the four techniques for water electrolysis. The first two, they are low temperature process, and the second, like steam electrolysis, they are high temperature process. Coming to the alkaline electrolysis, which is a low temperature process. Alkaline water electrolysis, it is a well established, low cost and most developed electrolysis method. It is a commercialized process that uses non-noble catalyst. In this process, water splits at the cathode side and produces hydrogen and hydroxide ion, followed by hydroxide ion traveling to the anode side to produce oxygen and water. These electrodes are submerged in the electrolyte and a diaphragm, which is permeable to water and hydroxide ion, separates the product gases. The liquid electrolyte in this process used are usually KOH and NaOH. The electrode can be either nickel, iron, cobalt, but however, most widely used electrode is nickel due to its low cost, availability, and high activity. The operating pressure is 3 megapascal, and the temperature operation range is from 340 to 365 Kelvin. The advantages are that its durability is very high. It is a commercialized technology and efficiency is up to 70%. The disadvantage is that electrolyte is liquid and it leads to corrosion. The current density in this process is also low and it consumes high energy. Coming to the next process, which is polymer electrolyte membrane electrolysis. In polymer electrolyte or PEM electrolysis, water splits into hydrogen ion, oxygen, and the electron at the anode. Then the hydrogen ion, which is proton, travels to the cathode through the membrane, while electron exit from the anode using an external power source and recombine with proton to produce hydrogen. The PEM electrolysis offers a fast response, high energy efficiency of around 90%, and ultra high hydrogen purity. The purity of hydrogen obtained from this process is very high. The higher hydrogen production rate and the high proton conductivity, compact system design, low gas permeability, low thickness, and high current density makes it a suitable hydrogen production process. But there are several disadvantages, that the cost of material is high, acidic environment. These are several disadvantages. The state-of-art electrocatalyst for this process are platinum coated on palladium and iridium oxide coated on ruthenium oxide as cathode and anode catalyst respectively. The PM water electrolysis technique operate in temperature of range from 40 to 80 degree and has lower hydrogen yield efficiency and lower production cost compared to alkaline water electrolysis. If we see the advantage and disadvantage, these are it produces a high purity of hydrogen, the power consumption is low, it is ecologically clean and high safety. And the disadvantages are that the high cost of component, durability is low compared to alkaline, and it is not partially established technology. Coming to the next process, which is a high temperature process, it is steam electrolysis. Compared to low temperature water electrolysis, high temperature electrolysis operates in high temperature electrolysis or steam electrolysis has not been commercialized so far. It is a promising technology that can electrochemically split steam into hydrogen and oxygen using electricity and heat at high temperature, usually of 700 to 900 degrees centigrade. Steam electrolysis at lower temperature of 500 to 800 degrees centigrade have also been reported at few places. The electricity needed for this process is about 35% lower than that of conventional electrolysis at low temperature, because the required electricity decreases with increasing temperature. And for high temperature, we can also use waste heat of process like nuclear, solar, and geothermal power plants. The steam electrolysis advantage and disadvantage is that it operates at high pressure. The efficiency is almost 100%, and it can get high temperature from various renewable sources, which I mentioned earlier in the previous slide. The disadvantage is that technology is still in laboratory phase. The durability is low due to high heat, and the design of system is very bulky. Coming to the next process, which is solid oxide electrolysis, various research are going on for this process. The solid oxide electrolysis, or we call it SOE, it was first introduced in 1980. Solid oxide electrolysis has attracted an abundant deal of attention due to the electrical energy converts into the chemical energy, along with production of ultra pure hydrogen with greater efficiency of almost 85%. Solid SOE operates at high pressure and high temperature of 500 to 800 degrees C and utilizes the water in form of steam. SOE process also conventionally uses the O2 conductor, which are mostly from nickel yttria stabilized zirconia. Nowadays, some ceramic proton conducting material have been developed and studied fuel cell. However, increasing the attention due to ceramic proton conducting material for the SOE electrolysis process, due to this material demonstrate high efficiency and superior ionic conductivity than O2 conductor at an operating temperature of 500 to 700 degrees C. The main characteristic of solid oxide SOE technology is high operating temperature, which makes it advantageous compared to low temperature electrolysis. The process of it is, I have mentioned the process in next slide. This is the cell architecture. The architecture of solid oxide electrolysis is comprised of 4 constituents, including the hydrogen, or we call it as steam cathode, the oxygen electrode, the electrolyte, and the intermediate layer between the oxide electrode and electrolyte. The interconnect layer is another component that is used in a stack of cells. Hydrogen generation mostly occurs in the hydrogen electrode and at the interface between the electrode and the electrolyte. Thus, the cathode should be a porous material with electronic and ionic conductivity. The reaction, if we take the reaction takes place at the triple phase boundary where the ionic phase, which is oxygen ion conductive, and the electric phase, and the gas phase where the hydrogen release meets. The oxygen ion are oxidized at the oxygen electrode to produce oxygen gas. This reaction occurs at interface between oxygen electrode and the electrolyte. Similar to hydrogen electrode, the oxygen electrode should be comprised of a porous compound too. Suitable thermal and chemical compatibility over time, as well as high electrolytic activity, high electronic and ionic conductivity are the most important feature of the oxygen electrode. So these are the four processes of electrolysis which I have discussed here. There are various new processes growing on in this same in the solid oxide electrolysis itself, but due to the constraint of time, I would now handle the dice to Dr. Mansa Nouni for his presentation. Sir, shall I share your presentation from here itself?
Yeah. I convey greetings to all the participants from India, and I congratulate Nalanda University for choosing such a topical subject for this masterclass. In the energy landscape, hydrogen has been attracting a lot of attention in the recent times. And secondly, I thank Professor Narula for giving that elaborate introduction about me. I still consider myself as a keen student of hydrogen energy. I don't consider myself as an expert. So with these opening words, I come to the my presentation, and the topic of my presentation is green hydrogen opportunities and challenges. My task has been made somewhat simpler by Mr. Sourav by covering the difficult part of giving the introduction about hydrogen and electrolysis and different electrolyzer technologies. Next slide. My presentation will have the following components: green hydrogen, its drivers, definition of green hydrogen, global hydrogen scenario, its demand and strategies, hydrogen storage, transportation and delivery, hydrogen applications, green hydrogen opportunities in India, and challenges associated with green hydrogen. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. This is an interesting slide in the context of today's discussion and this presentation. In this second quadrant, we have countries like South Africa, India, China. On x-axis, we are having the CO2 intensity of the electricity, and on y-axis, it is cost of electricity in US dollar per kilowatt hour. So in this second quadrant, for countries like South Africa, Poland, India, China, these are being characterized by lower cost of electricity and at the same time very high CO2 intensity in grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. And that is because these countries are still dependent on the fossil fuels for meeting their electricity energy demand. In the third quadrant, there are countries like France and Brazil. These countries, as you know, France heavily depends on nuclear energy for meeting its electrical energy requirement. Brazil is considerably dependent on hydropower and other renewable forms of energy. So because of that, the CO2 intensity of the electricity in these two countries is quite low compared to the countries which are there in the second quadrant. And their cost of electricity is also on the lower side. In the fourth quadrant, we have countries like Germany, Italy, UK, where the cost of electricity is high, but the CO2 intensity of the electricity is somewhat in between the countries on, say, South Africa, India, China on one side, and France and Brazil on the other side. This is because these countries are moving away from fossil fuels and they are putting more emphasis on renewable energy. And as a result of that, they need a lot of energy storage, and these two things push up their cost of electricity. So when we talk of storage, then hydrogen becomes relevant. How it becomes relevant, I'll explain in the next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Yes, sir.
So climate change and greenhouse gases, the emissions are now being discussed, debated, and everybody is feeling concerned about it because for meeting the growing energy demand, which is on account of population increase and also GDP growth, the dependence on fossil fuel is still on very much on the higher side. And as we have seen in the recent time, because of the geopolitical issues, the international prices of liquid and gaseous fossil fuels, they went up very high, and particularly the European countries, they have felt the heat. As a result of that, the economies, countries, they are having their energy plans, which puts a lot of emphasis on energy security and shifting away from fossil fuels and increasing the dependence of renewables. That becomes the key elements of energy security of any country. So when more emphasis is given on renewables and its penetration in the energy system increases, then the importance of energy storage becomes quite critical. And in this context, hydrogen is considered as a very good energy storage medium, both for short term as well as medium and long term. And one thing which has been witnessed by many countries where the penetration of renewable energy has increased in the recent years because of the uh, requirement of the grid. Sometimes the renewable energy based systems, whether it is solar or wind, they are in a position to supply electricity to the grid, but the grid is not in a position to accept that electricity. And this electricity is curtailed, that is not utilized for any purpose. So this curtailed electricity could possibly be utilized for hydrogen production, and that hydrogen could be utilized subsequently when there is lower electricity generation from renewable energy based systems. And as Sourav mentioned in his presentation, uh, hydrogen is a very versatile energy carrier, and it can be converted into its derivatives, which have lot of say usage industrially and otherwise also, and that I will cover in the later part of my presentation. So next slide, please. With this, why hydrogen? What are its advantages? As I mentioned, it offers energy security because it can make use of locally available resources, and it can be produced both from conventional as well as renewable energy sources. If it is produced through electrolysis process, then it becomes significant because renewable and water, we think that these are going to be there for many, many centuries to come. It is utilizable across industrial sector, power sector, transport, and residential sectors. So that way, it's very versatile. It is storable in the form of compressed gas, cryogenic liquid by liquefying it, cryocompressed liquid organic hydrogen carriers, ammonia, methanol. Renewable energies, these are dilute form of energy. And when we convert that renewable energy into hydrogen and compress it, then it can be densified. It becomes a dense form of energy. It can be easily transported through road, rail, ship, and pipelines. And it is environmentally benign because water is formed on its oxidation. And since we are using renewable energy and water, it is recyclable process. Next slide. See, this hype which we are seeing so far as hydrogen is concerned, same thing happened about nearly 20 years back when in 2002, came with the National Hydrogen Energy Roadmap. In the State of Union address, President George W. Bush, he said that the kids, those are born at that time, when they become adult, they will drive hydrogen fuel cell cars. So that was the kind of a importance that US was giving to hydrogen. And with the initiative of US, International Partnership for Hydrogen Economy came into existence in 2003, and the objective was to foster international cooperation on hydrogen energy and fuel cells. Later on, its name was changed to International Partnership for Hydrogen and Fuel Cells in the Economy in 2009. India also came out with its National Hydrogen Energy Roadmap, which was adopted in 2006. And it had very ambitious targets in terms of having 1,000 megawatt capacity for electricity generation using fuel cells, and putting 1 million hydrogen fuel cell cars, both using fuel cell as well as internal combustion engine technologies, by 2020. Next slide. In spite of these efforts, though I discussed about US, India, and IPHE efforts, other countries, they also took other initiatives. These efforts were not really successful. So what really went wrong? Because there was a lot of focus only on fuel cell electric vehicles, and other sectors of economy, they were more or less neglected. So other stakeholders, they felt as if they have not been made a part of that hydrogen journey. So there was not really that much success. Now, probably in this present wave, this may not be hype. This may be a reality. And let us find out how it is going to be a reality in subsequent slides. Next slide, please. Next, I will now discuss about definition of green hydrogen. Presently, there is no universal agreed definition for green hydrogen. And some of the international organizations like IEA, IRENA, etc., they do not associate any colors with hydrogen, and instead they use a term called low carbon hydrogen. And since lot of talk is going on about trade of green hydrogen, so the need for having a definition for green hydrogen is being increasingly recognized, and definition of green hydrogen is under development, and that is based on its production through renewable pathways, and also assigning some sort of a carbon dioxide emissions in its production. And one of the definitions which has been proposed is that green hydrogen is hydrogen produced through electrolysis of water with 100% or near 100% renewable energy with close to zero greenhouse gas emissions. That is, it should be less than or equal to 1 kg of carbon dioxide per kg of hydrogen. But this is only a proposed definition. There has to be a agreement on the definition with respect to what is going to be the associated CO2 emission with its production. Next slide. Now I will discuss about global hydrogen scenario, its demand and strategies. Next slide. In 2021, global hydrogen demand was estimated as 94 million ton, and this included 70 million ton as pure hydrogen and 24 million ton of hydrogen with carbon containing gases such as carbon monoxide, which is a normal process when we produce methanol and steel. And this 94 million ton of hydrogen, that was the demand in 2021. 40 million ton was used in, or 40 million ton was demand in refineries, followed by ammonia synthesis, methanol production, and steel making, with their respective demands being 34 million ton, 15 million ton, and 5 million ton. Next slide. This 94 million ton of hydrogen was almost entirely produced using fossil fuels, and the contribution of hydrogen that was produced using natural gas was about 62%. 19% of hydrogen was used using coal, and that was mainly in China. 18% of hydrogen was produced as a byproduct of naphtha reforming in petroleum refineries. Low emission hydrogen production from fossil fuel was less than 1 million ton in 2021 and 2022. And only 35,000 tons of hydrogen was produced following electrolysis process in 2021, and its share increased to some 90,000 tons in 2022. So that way, as per the current understanding of green hydrogen, one can understand where do we stand. Next slide. As per IEA, International Energy Agency, outlook for 2030 indicates that there could be total hydrogen demand of 180 million ton, of which 24 million ton could be low emission hydrogen, and out of this 24 million ton, 14 million ton could be electrolytic hydrogen, which is a green hydrogen as per current understanding. And this will be mainly focused in Europe, 5 million ton, Australia, 3 million ton, Southern America, Middle East, and Northern America, 4 million ton. These are the major hubs for this electrolytic hydrogen production. And Australia is going to mainly focus on exports. Fossil fuel based hydrogen production, which will have built-in feature of carbon capture, utilization, and storage, will is expected to have a contribution of 10 million ton, and this would be mainly in Europe, that is Netherlands and United Kingdom, and in Northern America, USA and Canada. Uh, Both these regions will have production capacities of 3 million ton each. Next slide. So in this context, hydrogen policies become important because hydrogen is a new energy vector and it needs policy intervention for its speedy adoption. These policy instrumentations need to be tailored to country-specific priorities, their constraints, and also taking into account the resource availability and the existing infrastructure. And the countries announce their policies. These have been focusing on, say, one thing, establishing target or long-term policy signals, because that gives some kind of a vision for role of hydrogen in the overall energy policy framework. They also spell out the instruments for creation of demand for low emission hydrogen. And in order to mitigate investment risk uh, in projects across hydrogen value chain, facilitate access to finance, and accelerate deployment, the what are going to be the policy measures, those are also spelled out. Since it's a new energy vector, the policies also put focus on promoting R&D, innovation, strategic demonstration projects, and knowledge sharing. And they also cover the appropriate regulatory framework, standards, and certification system, because unless and until these things are taken care of, the barriers, trade, the confidence of the investor and also consumer in this new technology cannot be generated. Next slide. So far, about 32 countries, they have come out with their hydrogen strategies. And these strategies give some kind of an indication about what is going to be the hydrogen production target. For example, India has indicated 5 million ton by 2030, Canada 4 million ton per year, Japan 4 million ton per year, South Korea 1.94 million ton per year. Deployment of electrolyzers, Chile has given 25 gigawatt, China 80 gigawatt by 2030, European Union 40 gigawatt by 2030, Africa 20, South Africa 10 gigawatt, and also deployment of fuel cell vehicles. Japan has indicated 800,000, South Korea 2.9 million. Similarly, France and Netherlands have also indicated some kind of a deployment targets. Deployment of hydrogen refueling systems, because without having hydrogen refueling systems, hydrogen fueled vehicles cannot apply. So different countries, they have indicated the targets for deployment of hydrogen refueling systems. Then hydrogen production processes that are going to be utilized. for example, using electrolysis powered by renewables, or producing blue hydrogen, where fossil fuels are going to be utilized with carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So different countries, they have indicated what is going to be their strategy for hydrogen production, and what are going to be the different applications for which hydrogen is going to be utilized. That has also been indicated by different countries. For example, Australia has indicated that the hydrogen would be used in buildings, electricity, export, shipping, and transport. China has mentioned that it is going to utilize hydrogen for industry and transport. Germany has indicated that it will be utilizing hydrogen for aviation, electricity, industry, refining, shipping, and transport. Next slide. So now with this background, I'll share some thoughts about hydrogen storage, transportation, and delivery. Next slide. Hydrogen storage, this has got a lot of issues which needs to be taken care of, because storage of hydrogen is complex compared to conventional fuels, as its molecule is very small. It is lightest among all the known elements. It has got low volumetric energy density. Hydrogen is a gas under ambient conditions. Therefore, taming and preserving it are quite challenging tasks. And for improving energy density uh, and storability, it needs to be converted to other substances that contain it, for example, ammonia. Hydrogen can be stored either in the physical form or in the material based systems. When we say physical form, it could be in the compressed gas form, or it could be uh, uh, cool gas, and then it is compressed, and it could be liquefied hydrogen. When we talk of material based things, then it is metal organic framework which absorbs hydrogen. It could be a liquid organic hydrogen carriers like methyl cyclopentane, methyl cyclohexane, interstitial hydrides like lanthanum nickel, complex hydride like sodium alanates, chemical hydrogen like ammonia, borane, etc. Some of these things I'll explain in the subsequent slides, because I will not be able to cover everything because of the time constraint. Next slide. When we talk of physical based hydrogen storage, the main things which have to be taken care of is to achieve the required performance, both in terms of autonomy and weight efficiency. Uh, it can be stored, as I mentioned, either in the compressed form. For this purpose, hydrogen is its pressure is raised in the range of 20 to 100 megapascal, 200 bar to 1000 bar in carbon fiber composite pressure vessels. And this is done so because we are able to get higher storage capacity, and these carbon fiber composite materials, they give the lightweight storage container. And when this is not the requirement, uh, if we don't need higher storage capacity, then simple metal pressure vessels can be used. For liquefying hydrogen, its temperature needs to be lowered up to minus 253 degrees Celsius. And liquefied hydrogen is preferred when large quantities of hydrogen are needed to be transported with very high gravimetric storage performance. And this particular form of hydrogen storage was used in 2022 when cryogenic hydrogen was shipped from Australia to Japan. And normally this liquefied hydrogen is at ambient pressure. And when we want higher storage capacity compared to liquefied hydrogen, then we go for cryocompressed, where the temperature is lowered and at the same time the pressure is also increased. This pressure can go as high as 300 bar. So this gives somewhat a better storage capabilities compared to liquefied hydrogen. Next slide. Uh, when we talk of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, then hydrogen cylinders become very important, and we should have some idea about them. These are categorized as type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. And type 1 is traditional all metal cylinder. It is made of stainless steel or aluminum. It is cheap to produce, but it is heavy. In this case, we can go up to 200 bar pressure, and it gives a storage capacity of 1.7 weight percent. When I say storage weight percent storage capacity of 1.7%, it means roughly that a system weighing about 100 kgs would have hydrogen content of about 1.7 kg. Then type 2 cylinders, it is there is a additional layer of carbon fiber, and that is able to take some kind of a load, and because of that its strength increases, and that reduces the weight. It is more expensive than type 1. We can go up to 300 bar pressure with the type 2 cylinder, and the storage capacity is 2.1 weight percent. Type 3 cylinder, it is a carbon fiber composite vessel with stainless steel or aluminum vessel inside. uh, Carbon fiber outer vessel takes load. Its cost is high than type 2, but it can withstand higher storage pressures, and the storage pressure can go as high as 700 bar, and the storage capacity could be as high as 4.28%. Type 4 cylinder is all carbon fiber with a inner liner of polyamide or polyethylene. In the case of type 3, it was stainless steel or aluminum. Here it is all um, non-metal based system, and as a result of this, the weight is on the lower side, strength is on the higher side. So so we can go in for higher pressures, and we can achieve up to 5.7 weight percent storage capacity. So that's a nutshell about hydrogen cylinders. Next slide. In chemicals, two main options that are available is liquid organic hydrogen carrier and ammonia, methanol, and formic acid. Next slide. Here, liquid organic hydrogen carrier is explained. In first step, toluene is hydrogenated and it gets converted into methyl cyclohexane, and then this methyl cyclohexane can be stored or it could be transported to the point of use, and there dehydrogenation can be effected, and for that process we need a pressure of 1 to 5 bar and temperature of 200 to 420 degrees Celsius. External heat is required, and this methyl cyclohexane again gets converted into toluene. Toluene can be transported back, and this process can be repeated. Hydrogenation process also needs high pressure of 20 to 50 bar and temperature of the order of 50 to 250 degrees Celsius. But this is an exothermic reaction. The positive aspects are that methyl cyclohexane and toluene both are liquids at ambient conditions, so it is easy to handle them. Storage capacity of 5 to 6 weight% could be achieved, and noble metal catalyst and high temperatures are required for both hydrogenation and dehydrogenation process. And following this particular hydrogen storage and transportation method, in 2020, hydrogen was shipped from Brunei to Japan, covering a distance of about 4,000 kilometers. Next slide. Methanol, as I mentioned, methanol, ammonia, formic acid, these are other forms because they offer a lot of advantages. They are already produced in bulk. No transport and storage issues are associated with them. Large-scale storing options and existing experience of handling them is available with these kinds of storage mediums. And when renewable or green hydrogen is used to produce them, then the ammonia, methanol, etc., they will also be called green. But if we are producing green methanol, then source of carbon will have to be identified, and the issues involved with them are sorry, decomposition of decomposition of ammonia and methanol. These are energy intensive. Formic acid has low hydrogen storage capacity, and there would be need for storing and capturing carbon dioxide or ammonia or nitrogen when we are trying to obtain hydrogen from these hydrogen carriers. Next slide. For transportation and delivery, the options are pipelines, tube trailers, and liquid hydrogen delivery. For pipelines, large quantities can be transported via existing pipelines. For installing new pipelines, it needs a lot of investment, and they could make use of both fiber reinforced plastic or stainless steel. Tube trailers, gaseous hydrogen can be compressed up to 500 bar pressure, and these high pressure hydrogen is stored in long cylinders which are stacked and put on a trailer, and with steel tubes we can get up to 380 kg per trailer, and with the composite material one can get 600 to 900 kgs of hydrogen delivery per tube trailer. If we want to transport hydrogen over a longer distance, because transporting gaseous hydrogen over long distance may not be economical, then liquid hydrogen delivery mechanism is preferred. In this case, a super insulated cryogenic tanker truck is used for transporting hydrogen as shown in the figure. Next slide. Now I'll discuss something about hydrogen applications. Next slide. As mentioned, hydrogen is a versatile energy carrier, and it can be used across industry, transport, power, building sectors. In industry, it can be used for ammonia synthesis, petroleum refineries, in iron and steel, food processing, petrochemical, synthetic fuel production, float glass manufacturing, semiconductor industry. In transport, it can be used both in internal combustion engines as well as in fuel cell vehicles. Uh, for power generation, uh, it can use IC engine, fuel cell, and gas turbines, and it could also be used as a storage medium for variable solar and wind power. And some of you may be knowing that hydrogen is used as a coolant for generators in thermal power plants. In building sector, it can be used for combined heat and power, and also for heating, cooking, cooling, etc. Next slide. In petroleum refineries, the demand for hydrogen is highest, and hydrogen is needed for processes like hydrocracking and hydrotreating, wherein hydrogen catalytically reacts with hydrocarbon. Hydrocracking is basically hydrogenation of heavy gas oils to produce refined fuels such as diesel and kerosene. So there is low demand for diesel and kerosene. So heavier fractions are converted by having higher hydrogen to carbon ratios. In hydrotreating, hydrogen is used for hydrogenating sulfur and nitrogen. So this is the requirement because the fuel standards are becoming strict, keeping in view the emission norms, and the sulfur and nitrogen from the fuel can be removed as hydrogen sulfide and ammonia. In ammonia synthesis, which is the second highest user of hydrogen, uh, ammonia is produced by Haber-Bosch process at a pressure of about 250 to 350 bar and at a temperature of 450 to 500 degrees Celsius. And nitrogen is sourced from air, and hydrogen is produced presently by reforming fossil fuels. 70% of it comes from natural gas, 30% from the coal. For green ammonia, green hydrogen can be used. Methanol is produced from syngas, which is obtained by reforming natural gas at 50 to 100 bar and 250 degrees Celsius pressure. For green methanol, production from electrolytic hydrogen can be advantageous, but carbon source would be needed. Next slide. For iron and steel making, hydrogen is emerging as a new reducing agent in place of coke. There are three types of steel making process. One is blast furnace and basic oxygen furnace, where coke is used. Then direct reduced iron, where carbon monoxide and hydrogen are used as a reducing agent. And electric arc furnaces, where new steel is produced from steel scrap. So now there is a talk of direct reduced iron and electric arc furnace, and that can help in making green steel. And this is one area which is hard to abate sector, and electricity is really not able to help in decarbonization of iron and steel. And in that context, hydrogen is emerging as one of the possible reducing agent for obtaining green steel. Next slide. I think I'll have to speed up because of the time constraint. And so in food processing and glass making, hydrogen is utilized. Hydrogen converts palm oil, sunflower oil, and olive oil into saturated oils and fats. And here hydrogen is used at 140 to 250 degrees Celsius at a pressure of 2.7 to 4 bar. And for float glass industry, which has got a lot of applications in windows, solar panels, LCD displays, and automotive windscreens, hydrogen along with nitrogen is used for preventing oxidation of tin, because glass is produced by allowing it to cool in a molten tin bath. And in order to get a good quality glass, uh, oxidation of tin has to be prevented, and that is achieved by using nitrogen and hydrogen. Next slide. Uh, Presently, hydrogen contributes about only 0.2% of global electricity generation, and most of it comes from hydrogen containing gases from steel plants, oil refineries, and petrochemical units, and also chlor-alkali industry. Uh, Reciprocating gas engines, fuel cells, gas turbines. These are technically capable of operating on hydrogen rich gases or even pure hydrogen. Reciprocating gas engines, they can handle gases with a volumetric hydrogen content up to 70%. And engines using 100% hydrogen have also been demonstrated. Gas turbines can also operate on hydrogen-rich gases. A 45 megawatt gas turbine at a refinery has been operating on gases with up to 95% hydrogen for 25 years in Korea. Humidified gas is used in this refinery. It blocks emissions. In Japan, 100% dry hydrogen gas has been used in 1 megawatt gas turbine, and commercial units are operating with hydrogen alone. These are expected to become available by 2030. Next slide. Fuel cell can produce electricity and heat with electrical efficiencies of up to 50 to 60% using hydrogen. One of the beauties of fuel cell is that they provide high part load efficiencies, and this makes them really flexible for the electricity systems. But global installed capacity of stationary fuel cell in 2021 was hardly 2.5 gigawatt, and um, of this, about 90 megawatt was using hydrogen as a fuel, and remaining were using natural gas. Uh, Interest, of course, is increasing in use of co-firing of hydrogen and ammonia in thermal power plants. In gas turbine, hydrogen is preferred for co-firing, and in coal thermal power plants, ammonia is preferred option. 1% ammonia co-firing has already been demonstrated from 2017 onwards in Japan, and the target is to achieve 20% ammonia co-firing in 1 gigawatt power plant in next few years. Next slide. So far as transport is concerned, hydrogen fuel can be used both in internal combustion engine as well as fuel cell. When it is the case of IC option, then there are two options. Either it has to be dual fuel IC, or they can be 100% hydrogen IC. And in dual fuel option, we can use hydrogen with CNG, or we can use hydrogen along with diesel. Next slide. Uh, as on 30th June 2022, there were about 60,000 fuel cell electric vehicles on the road, of which 50,000 were car, 5,000 were buses, and 5,000 were commercial vehicles. In terms of their deployment, Korea is the leading country with 23,000 fuel cell electric vehicles, followed by USA having 14,000, China 9,000, and Japan 5,000. More than 85% of world's fuel cell buses and more than 90% of fuel cell trucks, they are operating in China. and there are about 1,100 hydrogen refueling stations working globally for providing hydrogen to these hydrogen fueled vehicles. Some of the popular hydrogen fueled vehicle is Toyota Mirai, Hyundai Nexo, and buses, trucks. All these are available in the European, Chinese, Japanese, Korean market, and European market. Next slide. Even though fuel cell vehicles, they enjoy better performance and practically no tailpipe emission, but lot of development work on IC engine technology is going on. Companies like JCB, Cummins, etc., they are coming out with their IC engine based trucks, etc. And this is on account of the following, because they can use hydrogen with some impurities, unlike fuel cell where pure hydrogen is required. These vehicles, they need only few inexpensive modifications in the existing engine technology. So the option would be relatively more economical. And compared to conventional fossil fueled vehicles, hydrogen IC engine vehicles, they provide higher efficiency and lower emissions. Uh, Existing manufacturing infrastructure for IC can continue to be utilized for manufacturing hydrogen IC, and therefore no new major capital investment would be required for making transition to hydrogen IC. And hydrogen IC could act as a bridging technology for making transition from fossil fueled vehicles to fuel cell vehicles, which are still having a lot of challenges. Next slide. Uh, Blending of hydrogen and natural gas. This is a low hanging fruit when it comes to utilizing hydrogen. And blending is basically mixing hydrogen, or it's basically injecting natural gas system using the existing natural gas infrastructure. Blending could be an interim strategy to kickstart green hydrogen production until demand grows, to either repurpose existing natural gas infrastructure, or dedicated hydrogen pipelines are installed. Hydrogen natural gas blends, they can be used to generate power and heat with lower emissions in comparison to natural gas alone. Next slide. I'll now discuss something about opportunities in for green hydrogen in India. I gave some overall view that what could be the opportunities globally when I mentioned that 94 million ton of demand exists in refineries, ammonia synthesis, steel making, methanol, etc. So let us see what are the opportunities in India for green hydrogen. Next slide. A study was undertaken by National Institute of Solar Energy, and it estimated hydrogen production capacity in India as 6.34 million ton as on 1st April. There would be slight increase in this, of which 2.845 million ton was in petroleum refineries. In ammonia synthesis for fertilizer production, it was 3.38 million ton. Chlor-alkali units, 0.114 million ton, and merchant hydrogen was very much on the lower side. And the demand was highest in the ammonia synthesis plants, 2.6 million ton, followed by petroleum refineries, 2.56 million ton, chlor-alkali units, and merchant hydrogen, space applications, float glass, thermal power plants, hydrogen peroxide, methanol production. All these were having a demand for some hydrogen So these are possibly the opportunities that exist for green hydrogen in India. In addition, India imports about 10 million ton of urea, 5 million tons of DAP, and 3 million tons of ammonia each year. Government of India is planning to have complete replacement of ammonia-based fertilizer imports by 2034-35. Therefore, 1.73 million ton of green hydrogen will be needed for import substitution of imported urea, DAP, and ammonia. So, if this is also taken into account, then total requirement of hydrogen in India is 8 million ton, and this is the kind of a market which exists for green hydrogen in India. Next slide. In the opening remarks, Professor Sapna Narula mentioned about National Green Hydrogen Mission, and I will not really go into much detail because this is some kind of a policy and strategy which Government of India has brought for promoting green hydrogen landscape in this country, and this document indicates that the requirement for green hydrogen would be about 5 million ton by 2030, and this would need renewable energy capacity addition by 125 gigawatt, and this will also help in abatement of 50 million ton of greenhouse gases, and this will also create 8 lakh crore of investment and creation of 6 lakhs new jobs. But in order to really create demand, there will have to be some kind of a mandate, as there is a mandate for renewable energy purchase obligation, mandate for green hydrogen in refineries, fertilizer units, and city gas distribution companies. And Government of India has already indicated what kind of incentives would be provided for green hydrogen production and for indigenous production of electrolyzers. Those details are available in the policy documents. Next slide. Now I'll come to this part of my presentation, green hydrogen challenges. Next slide. When we talk of green hydrogen, the bottom line is that unless and until the cost of green hydrogen is competitive to the existing gray or blue hydrogen, it will not be able to take off. For that, let us see what are the resources that are required for green hydrogen production, its storage and utilization. First of all, we need, there is a schematic thing here. We need renewable energy. Then we need to convert that to DC. It is fed to electrolyzer, and then hydrogen is produced. So for this purpose, we need renewable energy resource. Then technology for harnessing resource, that is SPV system or if it is geothermal, then geothermal or hydro, and then appropriate electrolyzer technology for converting water and electricity into hydrogen. Then water is another resource. Then land for installation of solar or wind system. Then precious metals for construction of some electrolyzers. And we need infrastructure for storage, transportation, and distribution. And then there has to be appropriate user awareness about use of hydrogen. Next slide. These two pictures show global solar resource and global wind resource map. In the northern part of the globe, the solar resource is not really adequate. Uh, Therefore, uh, when we consider renewable energy for green hydrogen production, the cost of renewable electricity would be largely dependent on what is the resource available. So, if we are thinking of, say, Northern Africa, or Middle East, there the cost of solar electricity would be quite attractive. Similarly, those areas which are well endowed with wind resource, there the cost of electricity generated from wind electricity generator would be quite promising. So, keeping these things in mind, the promising areas and countries for green hydrogen production are Middle East, Africa, Russia, China, USA, and Australia. And some of these countries would be basically targeting the export market. And in that context, Korea, Japan, and large parts of Europe are going to be net importers of green hydrogen. So it's not that every country would be able to produce uh, green hydrogen in cost competitive manner. Some of them would be more attractive than others. Next slide. See, when we talk of green hydrogen, we will have to consider the growth of renewable energy based electricity generating infrastructure. In this context, let us see the Indian scenario. Total power generating capacity as on 31st March 2023 in India was 416 gigawatt. And of this, 109.41 gigawatt was contributed by wind and solar. And wind alone contributed about 42.63 gigawatt, and solar contributed 66.7 gigawatt. And during the financial year 2022-23, that is from 1st April 22 to 31st March 23, 15.06 gigawatt of wind and solar capacity was added, of which 2.7 gigawatt came from wind and 12.78 gigawatt came from solar. So when we say that for 5 million ton of green hydrogen by 2030, deployment of 125 gigawatt new capacity is added, then this installation has to be undertaken at unprecedented pace, because the current pace of installation of wind and solar capacities does not really look very comforting when we indicate that we would be requiring 125 gigawatt of power additional capacity in next 7 years time. And in this context, European Union has introduced a concept of additionality, that if green hydrogen has to be produced by electrolysis of water, then the renewable energy electricity system has to be installed afresh. We cannot depend on the existing renewable energy based power generating system. Otherwise, it will defeat the purpose, and the existing renewable energy or existing renewable electricity would be diverted to produce green hydrogen. So this is going to be a challenge, how to really add additional renewable energy based power generating capacity in the next decade.